Metro Talk. My name is Tim Albright, in for Kent Shuffle. With us is Pat Gowan, one of the editors from the Post-Dispatch. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Tim.
And Mr. What's your name again?
Jim.
Jim Schrader from the Telegraph.
That's right. What's my name again? That's the way I feel about it.
There's an old
That's
song.
right.
Well, it's not that old.
That's right.
He might answer it a different way if you ask a second
He might.
time.
It depends on what time it is in the day of the week. Pat, we'll start with you. Congressman John Shimkus, former Congressman Jerry Costello, and Senator Richard Durbin all voted in favor of legislation that averted the fiscal cliff. Was this a good choice from all three of them?
Well, I think it was. If you look at who they are, you've got John Shimkus, who's a very conservative Republican. You've got Dick Durbin, who's generally considered a pretty liberal Democrat. You've got Jerry Costello, who's considered a fairly conservative Democrat. Shows the spectrum of people who are in support of essentially keeping the economy from completely collapsing, except we haven't really accomplished that because the tax increases that were under debate have sort of been done. The Republicans' leadership in the Senate anyway says we're done with them now. Democratic leadership in the House says, well, maybe not. And in any event, by the 1st of March, we've got some draconian spending cuts coming along, cutting deeply into defense and other programs that no one has any idea how to solve. So the fiscal cliff sort of came in pieces, and this passed the first piece. And maybe it was the easiest piece. Nobody wanted to see the complete restoration of the tax cuts on the middle class. It would have been devastating the economy. It would have been devastating a lot of people. They pushed the alternative minimum tax back for a lot of people with healthy earnings, but hardly rich. That thing loomed sort of like a monster in the dark, waiting for them to pass a threshold from which they probably weren't very far to reach into their pocketbook and extract up with another couple $1,000s a year. So there was a lot of progress made on that. It seems like it was the sort of thing consensus should be built on. I guess the next big issue will be the debt ceiling, which I don't think any reasonable person thinks ought to be held hostage to political debate, but we'll have to see on that one.
But that won't be the first time that's happened either.
Well, and this
in the last few years.
This shouldn't have happened. For this to be carried on literally into the new year, the deadline was the end of the year, but they couldn't. The effects of the fiscal cliff couldn't be implemented on the first day, so they had time to fix it before terrible things had happened. But except the terrible thing did happen. A lot of people lost additional faith in the operation of the government of the United States and the Congress of the United States, and they don't have much capital to lose like that. I don't know what happens when the country becomes as fed up as it is with the way it's being led, and I sense that a lot of that has to do with Congress, maybe more than it does the presidency. Where it goes from here, I don't know, but if I were in Congress, I'd be doing everything I could to at least keep what credibility I've got.
Jim, all three of our local representatives voted for the legislation that averted the fiscal cliff. Was that a good move by their part?
I don't think they had any choice. I think if you look at the constituents that these three men serve, that saw the potential for their taxes to go up substantially, and I'm not talking about their constituents that are rich. I'm talking about their middle-class constituents that primarily these men serve, are looking at a sizable tax increase. I think they had to say to their constituents, look what we voted to avert here. Even had, technically we'd gone over the cliff, it would have been something that would have been passed retroactively and been backed down on. But as Pat pointed out, the Congress right now, the Senate and the House has, a step lower approval rating than a door-to-door insurance salesman or something or other. And these guys had to do something to say, we're in this fight for you. And what's really done again, and has been done traditionally for the past couple of sessions of Congress, is we really kicked the can down the road again. There were a couple of little things that were done, and some of the tax increases on the wealthy were not quite as bad as some had predicted. But now we have the debt ceiling that's going to have to be raised again. We as a country are still not paying our bills on a regular basis. We're still borrowing a lot more money than we should be. With the amount of money that we're taking in, we're borrowing money to finance a war that has a lower approval rating even than our congressmen and senators, they did something. They did something to say, okay, we passed this bill now, but there is much work left to do. And they did it on a lame duck session, with this winding down rapidly. I think it was going to be done anyway. Ultimately, now the real work starts. We've got something to avoid the fiscal cliff that averted the fiscal cliff. Now we really got to figure out how to pay our bills as a nation.
If you want to see how bad it is, NBC News on Meet the Press on Sunday had an example. If you put this in the terms of a family, the United States government is the equivalent of a family that's making $24,000 a year, that spends $36,000 a year and already has $160,000 on its credit card. Those are the proportions. That's why, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, you've now agreed something has to be done.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Audrey Lucchese, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a four-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started and it can open so many doors for you.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education.
Right up here.
So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour
Lights there, darks there.
to show them that higher education means a brighter future. My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Find out how you can live United for education. Give, advocate, volunteer. Go to liveunited.org.
Do you wear this?
Welcome back to Metro Talk. Jim, a manager at a Denny's in Belleville, informed a group of police officers there that they were not welcome, that they couldn't eat there if they had their guns on them. Was this a good move? Should the manager have removed or asked the police officers to leave with their guns?
Was it a good move? Of course not. It certainly got picked up by social media and those slime buckets in the newspaper and broadcast industry. That would be us, right? Immediately, I think even Chief Clay in Belleville said that this is something that would have been handled quietly and behind closed doors if it were not for the immediacy of the news business now. I think this is a case where a manager thought he was doing right. A customer complained that a plainclothes detective was sitting in the restaurant, and this customer complained that this officer was carrying a gun. The manager says that the overarching policy of Denny's is to welcome uniformed police officers. These detectives were displaying their badges, but they were not in uniforms. I don't know why a customer would complain that an officer that's displaying a badge was carrying a gun in a restaurant. That would make me feel pretty safe in that restaurant. I was thinking of the old scene in the first Dirty Harry movie where he's trying to eat his hot dog and the guy's robbing the bank, and he has to go out and take care of business while he's eating his lunch. I was thinking of that type of thing could have gone on there. I think the manager was trying to follow the Denny's book and was trying to placate the customer that complained and got into it a little over his head with the detectives. It was a screw up. Denny's has since apologized. They met with the chief of the police in Belleville and the captain, Don Sachs, and they kind of worked out their differences, and now it's, all cops are welcome all days of all hours of the night. I think a manager screwed up, and it makes for great fodder for the news business, and it got blown out of proportion a lot more than it really should have.
Well, Jim even alluded to this. The Denny's corporations indicated that the manager made a mistake. Do you think that following it, maybe trying to placate the customer, as Jim said, or did he just flat out make a mistake in asking the detective to leave?
Well, you made a mistake. This has got to be, so far in 2013, one of the grandest non-stories nationally. The police department put out a press release about this. The media didn't get carried away with this. They spoon-fed it to us in a way that made it very hard for us to ignore. The original report we got indicated that another manager had stopped the officers before they left the premises to say, we've made a mistake and we're sorry. And the police said from the get-go that the officers were embarrassed and decided that the best thing to do was to leave. And by the way, they looked back and there was no such sign by the entrance that the manager who asked them to take their guns out had mentioned, saying there was a sign that said armed uniform police, whatever, suggesting that you could carry a gun if you were an officer in uniform, but perhaps not. Businesses for many years have courted police as customers, on duty and off duty. They put up signs in the window saying this is a police substation. They give them a desk to write reports. It's good business to have a reputation as a place where they're apt to be police. It holds down trouble, it holds down robberies. I remember when I was a kid, my folks would travel across the country and we'd stop at restaurants where there were police cars in the parking lot, because not only did it seem safe, but nobody probably knew the food better than the cops in the area, and if they were eating there, you could count on it to be good and reasonably inexpensive. Restaurants, I don't know about Denny's, frequently provide discounts, even free meals to police to try to get them to be there. So for Denny's to have done this, a manager to have done it, it seems just ludicrous. But another guy had tried to set it straight before they left the premises. I don't blame them for having hurt feelings. I don't blame them for being insulted and flabbergasted by what one guy did. But before the day was out, I'm thinking, if this thing goes viral enough, there could be cops boycotting Denny's, from Maine to California. Denny's could be brought to its knees by this one guy. I don't know what's happened to him, by the way. I think we probably ought to circle back and see if he's still working and if he's washing dishes or sealing the parking lot or something. But it was a huge non-story, but it was kind of silly. It reminded me of an odd episode. The FBI frequently does an evaluation of its field offices, and I'm sometimes interviewed because the police and court edited the paper about our view of the operation of the field office in St. Louis. I had an agent from San Francisco come to visit me once. They did do it from, another headquarters comes to evaluate them. It was a female assistant special agent in charge from the FBI office in San Francisco who was meeting me at 9:30 at the office. I'm walking to the door. I see a woman coming up that I think is her, and it is. I engage her in conversation. We get to our door, and there's a sign by the door. It says, "No firearms permitted on these premises." And she says to me, she says, I'm required to be armed. She says, I don't quite know what to do about this. And I said, well, carry your gun. But it was the only time I ever heard a cop of any kind hesitate, about the authority to carry a firearm pretty much anywhere. So that kind of flashed back in my mind with the Denny's thing. It's not a logical thing to ask them to remove their guns. I don't know that anybody ever went back to the patron who originally complained, who may have been casing the place to rob it for all I know. But a big non-story.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wondered. Would you want to be fingered as the person that complained that there's cops sitting there with guns? Oh no, that's the guy right there. He's the one that complained that you're sitting there displaying your badge.
Which car did he?
Yeah. Well, what's the license plate on that car over there? Yeah, it was just it was handled badly across the board. And certainly the Belleville police made some hay with it. The manager or the current manager or the current former manager embarrassed the Denny's Corporation. And I think the day after they negotiated, the cops ate free for the whole day. Any cop could come in uniform or out of uniform and eat free that next day.
I don't know what happened to the assistant manager, but it might have been more merciful if they just shot him.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
jeez. All right. Pat, the Missouri History Museum president, Robert Archibald, is leaving at the end of this month and receiving a check for $270,000 for consulting work and attorney's fees. He'll not have an official title or office or duties, but he'll help with ongoing fundraising. Should President Archibald receive $270,000 for consulting fees?
Well, gosh, I don't know what they're going to get for that, but consider that that's not all he's walking out with. He's walking out with over $500,000 in unused vacation pay accumulated over 11 years. He had 400 vacation days they paid him for. If you add that to the $270,000, it's about as much money as the History Museum spent on the piece of property that was owned by the former mayor that caused this controversy in the first place, which, by the way, they spent over $800,000 for, and it's ended up being valued at something like $232,000, big surprise, and they never even used it. I don't know what the policies are where you guys work. I guess I can be paid for unpaid vacation that I've earned in the current year, were I to leave or be shown the door, but I can't accumulate vacation 1 minute over the end of the year. So why he was allowed to do that, I don't know. But he got $500 and some thousand in unpaid vacation. By the way, how do you accumulate over 400 days of vacation? Don't you ever take any time off? Well, that wasn't really a problem because part of his working contract was that he got 6 weeks a year off to do research and writing. So maybe he was able to squeeze a little recreating into that period of time too. This is a guy who was paid, I'm looking at my notes trying to figure out where I wrote how much he was paid. $515,000 a year in pay and benefits. That includes his car allowance and his housing allowance. So to run the Missouri History Museum, the guy was being paid almost as much as the President of the United States added to the governor of Missouri. Could they have found somebody who might have been willing to work for less money? Well, they might. And this is an organization supported by tax dollars and by contributions, and they're having problems now with contributions, I understand, and I don't quite understand.
It's shocking.
So when you look inside these things, I mean, it was the land deal that caused us to look at it, but the whole deal certainly raises questions. Not my place to say what's right or wrong, but that place was certainly run by a well-compensated executive.
Well, here's the problem. As Pat pointed out, the Missouri Museum District is supported by the tax dollars, the same tax dollars that support the Science Center and the zoo, and the Art Museum. Art Museum and the zoo and the Botanical Garden, not the Science Center. You have a board that technically oversees Robert Archibald, but apparently were not much more than a rubber stamp. Let him do pretty well what he wanted, let him pretty well write his own deal, write his own compensation, do what he wanted to when he wanted to, or do nothing when he wanted to. Until somebody, the Post-Dispatch, opened this Pandora's box and found out that the museum paid an ungodly amount of money, $500,000, for a piece of property that might, on a good day, be worth $230,000, and that's after they paid legal fees and paid to clean up. I think there was asbestos or oil or something else on the
But
district.
the one thing they didn't pay for, an appraisal.
No, that's exactly right. They didn't pay for it because Bob Archibald and a couple of cronies that may or may not have been in the pocket of former Mayor Freeman Bosley Sr. Wrote the check, or Junior Freeman Bosley Jr. Wrote the check. This guy did pretty well what he wanted and was highly compensated for it. If I could accrue 400 days and get paid for 6 weeks to write, I'd like to know how much he wrote in that 6 weeks, by the way. And research. Show me what you got published in that 6 weeks that you were off on sabbatical doing writing. It's a bad deal. maybe this $270,000 is a quiet kiss for a year to kind of get him off the books. Or, as the board is saying, well, this guy was really good at raising funds and maybe will more than pay that $270,000 back. But I think, as Pat pointed out, since they're having so much trouble getting donations now, as long as Robert Archibald is still in any way connected with the Missouri History Museum, the donors or the donations are going to be few and far between because people just have a bad taste in their mouths.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to be talking with Michelle Singley about the dental hygiene program.
Dental hygiene students learn a variety of treatment skills when they're enrolled in the program at Lewis and Clark. For example, students learn to take a thorough medical history, to perform a head and neck assessment, including an oral cancer screening, and to assess the gum tissue, teeth, and bone of their patients. The students also take dental x-rays, perform dental cleanings, place dental sealants to prevent cavities, and treat the patient's teeth with fluoride or fluoride varnish. Dental hygiene students also teach others to take good care of their teeth with oral hygiene aids such as brush and floss. Our Gina the giraffe puppet is one of the students' favorites. We take her out to the schools to teach the kids good oral habits. For more information about the dental hygiene program, call us at 468-4413 and you can meet Gina.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
Lead paint poisoning affects 1 million children today. If you're pregnant or have young children and your home was built before 1978, you could be at risk. Learn how to protect your family. To find your home's danger zones, the health effects, or just to find help, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Bring out the action hero in you. Fuel up right and get energized. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
Welcome back to Metro Talk. Jim, the St. Louis County says it's missing $2 million in tax money due to mistakes. Now, they're saying it's because of office turnover and the complexity of the county's tax system. Is it feasible that $2 million in mistakes could have been made?
Is it feasible?
Is it possible?
Of course it's possible.
Okay.
Is it defensible? That's quite a different thing. But we just talked about another taxing body in the last segment that wasn't exactly paying attention to every dollar in and dollar out. This doesn't surprise me, especially, it would be like somebody, getting their checking account statement from their bank and they're within 15 cents on balancing their checkbook. Okay, that's close enough. I might have made a mistake in math. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars. So $2 million on the grand scale may not be a percentage, or on a percentage basis, may not be a lot of money. But my attitude is, as a taxpayer, I want every dollar accounted for. And if you have a change in personnel, so what? If there's a change in the accounting staff at the Telegraph, or a change in the accounting staff at the Post-Dispatch, or a change in the accounting staff of Lewis and Clark Community College, the continuity of tracking those dollars should be there. So, is it believable that there's $2 million that's unaccounted for? Yes. Is it defensible? Absolutely not.
Pat?
Well, it isn't exactly missing. They forgot to collect it. This was part of a tax for the Metropolitan Sewer District. The revenue collector collects the tax on all the taxing bodies. They forgot to collect $2 million worth of tax for Metropolitan Sewer District. So at some point they call up MSD and they say, hey, you better tighten your belt this year, pal. We forgot to collect your money. Now their plan is to collect it double, or collect the $2 million they forgot to take, that they'll collect it in the next cycle in 2013. So presumably at some point they'll be made whole, and they'll probably just lose the interest on the $2 million I presume that MSD will have to borrow in between, or I don't know how those costs will be reconciled. Embarrassing as this is, it wouldn't be quite so embarrassing if Dooley, the county executive, Dooley's administration hadn't hired a collector of revenue, only to find out that she hadn't paid personal property tax in Missouri since 2008. So she just quietly left the office, and then it's, oh my God, we forgot to collect $2 million for MSD. So I don't know what, if anything's coming next, but it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in that office.
Isn't it scary that we're collecting tax money from a body that's collecting tax money? Because MSD is collecting tax money as well.
It's like the county clerk collecting property tax here.
It's a redistribution.
You know, they collected, they redistribute the tax, or the county treasurer's office, I guess, actually collects the tax, and the county clerk levies it. But so they're just collecting the tax for all these agencies, and it was a goof.
A $2 million goof. Pat, real quickly, proposed improvements to the Gateway Arch grounds and various recreations area in St. Louis would be part of another taxing increase district that voters may have to be asked to approve in April. Should they approve these increases if the proposal is
I'm proud of the Gateway Arch. I'm proud of the grounds downtown. I live in Illinois, and I've said this sort of thing before. I don't believe there's any limit on what Missouri taxpayers ought to pay in order to provide me with a fine national park right across the river where we don't pay for it. This is St. Charles, St. Louis counties, and the city of St. Louis, which is its own county, and 2 out of the 3 have to pass I think St. Louis County and one of the others have to pass in order for this to provide money to local parks as well as to improve the arch grounds. This would be accoutrement, not part of the main plan for the arch, but to spiff it up beyond what might otherwise be happening. It's up to the voters to decide whether they want to pay for this. To me, that's sort of a continuum. Do you want to pay to have a park there at all? Do you want to pay to build an arch on it? Do you want to pay to keep it up? Do you want to pay to improve it? You know, I don't know where you draw the line. I'm not a voter, so I don't really have, in Missouri, so I don't have a dog in the hunt exactly. I'd like to see that place be all it can be, but if I were a voter in Missouri, I'd have to weigh it and say, well, am I better off to spend my money here or there? Can I afford this? Or are there other services that maybe I ought to get maybe I ought to take my money and send it to MSD as a donation since they were short of the $2 million.
At least they're bringing it before the voters.
Yeah.
At least the voters get to decide. It's not one of these arbitrary, somebody got in the back room and decided that we're going to assess this. I also like the idea that there is some roll down to local parks. So if I'm sitting out in St. Charles and I may never visit the arch, the fact that Riverfront Park or some of the parks along the Katy Trail or something like that could see some improvements. But I like Pat. I think they ought to charge all those St. Louis taxpayers and build a new stadium and build a tramway from East St. Louis across that we can ride over for free. They can build all kinds of stuff that I don't have to pay for.
I remember with the stadium that they get their hand out. There's the Rams' hand's going to be out for tax money for that. So that's one of the choices that'll be coming up.
Football stadium or park.
Well, if I were a taxpayer, I'd be thinking about that.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for Metro Talk. With us has been Jim Schrader, the editor of the...
Yeah, that's close.
You're not... Good Lord.
Hey,
You're
boss!
From the Telegraph.
Favorite guy.
He's Pat Gowan. He's from the Post-Dispatch. My name is Tim Albright. This has been my last time hosting Metro Talk. Have a nice day.